Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. This is a new segment I'm going to start doing called Just the Tip. I'm going to be giving you guys just a little bit of information on different things happening in politics. I'll do another segment for plants, for plant-based living and so forth, but very little commentary, just the top line facts. So the Biden administration is the first thing I want to talk about. They've halted the construction of a 211-mile stretch of road in Alaska because they found, quote, significant deficiencies in the environmental impact study that was conducted by the Trump administration. Imagine that. The Interior Department is going to conduct a new analysis. They're going to try to determine if Native communities, waterways, and wildlife will be impacted in negative ways. The next bit of news is about Target. They're vowing to increase wages and benefits. Target said that they'll be investing $300 million into hourly wages and benefits that will enable them to pay up to $24 an hour, depending on the job title and the local market. And they also plan to make it easier for employees to qualify for health insurance. So one way they plan to do that is by extending coverage to employees working an average of at least 25 hours a week. Previously, employees needed to work an average of 30 hours a week in order to qualify. Next up, I have news out of the Windy City. The city of Chicago is implementing a basic income program for residents who qualify. The program is going to launch in April, and it will provide $500 a month for up to 12 months for households that can show that they've experienced a financial hardship due to the pandemic. And they also have to have an income that's 250% below the federal poverty level. So what that means is for a household of three, they're going to need an income of $57,575 or less to qualify. So if you or someone you know would like to apply for that assistance, you can visit the city's online application page. It's at chicago.gov/cash pilot. The city's also offering a one-time $500 payment to domestic workers and anyone who's ineligible or was ineligible for federal relief funds, including undocumented immigrants. You know, what I don't like about these programs is that it's not universal. And so it just causes a lot of resentment. People end up being resentful because they don't qualify. It's not for everyone. And so that's why things get torn down. That's why they end. The next bit of news has to do with a woman's right to choose. Following in the footsteps of Mississippi and Texas, Florida has now introduced legislation to ban abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And they've also, as the other states did, they're allowing no exemptions for rape or incest, which is just evil personified. If this bill is signed into law by the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, the one and only instance in which a woman will be allowed to choose what she does with her body is if two doctors, not just one, two doctors have to certify a, quote, fatal fetal abnormality. And they have to agree that it will, quote, result in death upon birth or imminently thereafter. So once again, I call on lawmakers to introduce legislation that would require a man to be castrated if he rapes a female or impregnates a female through incest. If I was a member of Congress, I'd be drafting that damn bill right this minute. Anyway, this archaic proposed Florida law brings me to the next bit of news. Corporate Democrat Joe Manchin just voted with Republicans in the Senate to block a bill that would have protected a woman's right to choose under federal law. In September of last year, Democrats, you may recall, they introduced and they passed in the House of Representatives the Women's Health Protection Act. They passed it in the House, moved on to the Senate, where all Republicans voted against it, and Manchin joined them. He joined them in blocking women's access to an abortion, regardless of her home state. And everyone knows the Supreme Court may very well end Roe versus Wade soon. They have an upcoming ruling that will essentially completely dismantle Roe versus Wade. So the stakes could not be any higher for women and girls in this country. They have to pack the Supreme Court, not to make it over the top progressive, not to make it this liberal haven, but just to drag the Overton window back to center. Anyway, speaking of archaic regressive Republicans, Mississippi has a mayor named Gene McGee. He is withholding funding for public libraries in the city of Richland until all LGBTQ books are removed. McGee claims that he's received complaints from residents, and he said, quote, as a Christian, he can't support the libraries while they contain, quote, homosexual material. What year is it? Seriously? And what Bible is this guy reading? Because it says nothing about homosexuals in the Bible. It does say, however, to love others as you love yourself, not to be judgmental. So I don't know what he's reading. My other question, he does realize it's not contagious, right? Like you don't read about it and go, oh, I'm gay. And then what happened to separation of church and state? Rules, laws, the Constitution, I guess they're only made for everyone else, not Republicans, huh? Anyway, in keeping with this regressive theme, the next bit of news I'd like to share is that Texas Governor Greg Abbott forced lawmakers to change a recently enacted law that required students to be taught about domestic violence, family violence, dating violence, child abuse, sex trafficking, those types of things. Abbott vetoed the original bill, and he made lawmakers go back to the drawing table. They had to change the bill so that a parent's permission, a signed parent's permission, is now required for their child to receive that information. So that means that the kids who are most at risk of abuse will now be required to go get the signature from their abuser. Their potential abusive parent will now have to sign something to allow these children to learn that help is available to them. That makes sense, right? Party of family values. Yeah, pro-life. Next up is a little bit of good news. President Joe Biden nominated Catanji Brown Jackson to fill an upcoming vacancy on the Supreme Court. The reason that this is good news is because Jackson is a proponent of unions, and she's an advocate for workers, something that's sorely missing on the Supreme Court, even amongst the so-called liberal justices. They, as with the majority of our lawmakers, are only liberal when it comes to social issues. In regard to economic issues, they side almost 100% of the time with corporate interests. So I'm actually very pleased with that pick, although this isn't going to change the makeup of the court at all because she's replacing another left-leaning justice. Like I said, until the Dems pack the court, we're doomed. We're just doomed. But at least it's not another corporatist, which he had quite a few on his list. The next update I have to share is about mask mandates. As of March 12th, California, Oregon, and Washington State will be eliminating school mask mandates regardless of vaccination status. I think this is a positive move. It's going to require all of these idiot conspiracy theorists to shut up and find some new fake issue to be outraged about. The last tip I want to give you guys is that the United States and other large nations have decided to release oil reserves to try to lower gas prices. The US will be releasing 30 million barrels of oil from our reserve of approximately 582 plus million barrels that we have. This is, of course, not totally, but partially due to the war going on in Ukraine, because Russia produces so much of the world's oil that it's putting pressure to release more reserves. And, although we aren't here in the United States, we're not one of Russia's top buyers of oil, but it's become clear that Russia is in bed with the Saudis And they're both fixing the oil prices, and they're refusing to produce a greater volume and supply to keep the costs high. And Saudi, as you guys likely know, is where we get the majority of our oil. So, would have been great years ago if maybe our leaders had listened to experts, truly invested in renewable energy and alternative sources of energy before something like this happened. But, climate change is a big hoax. It's all a conspiracy. So why would they do that? Anyway, thank you so much for watching and listening. Take care. I will talk with you soon.